r/ask Reddit. What was the most satisfying time where you caught someone lying? A co-worker was a military retiree who claimed to have been everywhere. Someone might say, I spent a week in Cambodia. He'd say, yep, I was there once. Stopped over on my way to Thailand. We figured he was bullshitting most if not all the time. So we started inventing places. My cousin is traveling in Argentina. And he's at this mountain village called Burrito Salsa. Him. Oh. Yep, we did a joint military exercise with Argentina back in the 80s and stopped off there. US. Did you visit the temple on Blueberry Hill? Him. Hell. Yep, everyone in my outfit visited. Total bullshitter. When I worked fast food we had a customer like that. Every time he came in it was a story about his travels or things he bought. Anything to show how rich he was. None of us really cared and just played along because it was the quickest way to get rid of him. One day he comes in talking about his family up in Seattle is snowed in and he has to fly his private plane up there to get them. In retrospect that part doesn't make much sense either. I pulled out my phone and checked the weather and told him it was around 60 degrees in Seattle. He mumbled something about the forecast being wrong and left. Someone put down 2 sevens, but I had all 4 of them. The time-honored game of bullshit. Guest lied to me that he paid for 2 nights and wouldn't leave the room. Made me go through this giant ordeal of calling all the front desk employees and double check all their work. He threw a huge fit calling me a beach. Stupid dunt etc. He jets out of the parking lot and the police I called pull him over and take him in. Co-workers and I still play it on the camera and laugh about it. Well, props to him. He managed to get the second night for free in the end, in jail. I had a boss who kept on getting angry at me because I wasn't doing what he told me to do. Finally one day, I decided to start writing down exactly what he told me, dated it, and kept record of it. Then one day came where inevitably, what the hell are you doing? Exactly what you told me to do. I never told you to do that. Well, I have it written here. Pulls out note card on the 22nd of May 2016. You told me specifically to do this task, exactly like this, and never do it any other way. I finally won. I started standing up for myself a bit more in the office, and I was respected for it. My boss is the exact same. He is an abhorrent micromanager and consistently changes the goalposts on jobs that I have set up for the day or week. He also has totally unachievable timescales to complete really tedious jobs. I write every menial, stupid task he runs by me in a diary, so when he changes his mind, which he inevitably does, I have it in writing. It's also great to be able to file out my list of tasks in order of urgency and put his dogshit requests at the bottom of the page because they are always not important. Where are you on task A? Because you told me to do task A on Friday and marked it as non-urgent. I wasn't in Saturday or Sunday. It's now Monday. I haven't even had the chance to start. Always stand up for yourself in a professional manner. Good on you. Before desktop publishing, I was in my 20s, an ad designer for a local department store. The boss was out, and a co-worker, who had been there many years, and was jaded and grumpy all the time, was put in charge for the day. I brought an ad to her for approval, and she found some nitpicky thing that she wanted adjusted. I knew that it was just bullshit on her part. So she could feel powerful, I took the ad back to my desk, worked on something else for a while, then brought it back absolutely unchanged. She looked at it and said, "Oh, that looks much better," and approved it. I never let on that it was the exactly same version she'd rejected earlier. I travel for work. I 90% of the time park in economy at the airport. I think $14 per day, about a 10 to 15 minutes walk. A few times out of necessity to catch a flight I park in the garage. I think $24 per day, 5 minutes walk. Usually 2 to 3 day trips. Not a huge expense. My boss suggests I park in off-site shuttle parking, about $11 a day, but a pain in the ass as you need a bunch more time to plan for the shuttle. He said he does it because it is cheaper for the company, which he owns. One day while walking through the garage from on-site economy, they're in the reserved parking. Closest and like $40 per day is my boss's truck, and reserve takes planning. He wasn't just running late and needed to park in the garage to make a flight. I just put my business card under his wiper. I never brought it up. and I haven't heard any complaints about parking on my expense reports since. I love the elegance of your method. I must have been 9 or 10. My friends and I were all going through the same doll phase, so we would bring our favorites to each other's house and play. As my friend was leaving, I noticed a few of my dolls missing. She was holding them hostage in her doll limo. I just knew it. As she was walking outside, I casually said, "Oh, I think you might have grabbed my doll on accident." Flustered, she checked her limo and pulled out my dolls. "Got you." She also stole some of my dolls' clothing. I searched her room when she went to bathroom and stole it back. Stopped playing dolls with her. Once had a person work for me who would always call out and use her past health problems as a crutch to miss work all the time. One Monday she called in, gave me some generic illness excuse and said she couldn't get out of bed. That morning another department had a breakfast meeting at IHOP, and saw her there eating breakfast with her friends looking like she was in perfect health. The picture evidence sent to me was oh so satisfying. Did she get fired? Somehow she did not. My superior was furious about it and approved her termination, but I think the person who had the final say on it literally said, "Well, just because you're sick doesn't mean you can't eat." She did end up getting transferred to a lower position though. She is still with the company. Not completely relevant, but I doubt such a specific thread would come up anytime soon. I caught someone who was trying to convince me I was lying. When I was little, my mom was driving me to school. We went the more rural of the two possible roads, and on our way we saw a wolf. So we stopped the car and watched it from a distance for a little while. I told this to my aunt recently and she didn't believe me, because this isn't and never was a wolf area. My mom, even though she was with me, didn't get involved in the argument. The argument was at a standstill at that point. I claimed it was a wolf. She claimed it was a jackal, which are not in this area either, but it's maybe a bit more likely. With all the wonders of modern technology, she opened her phone, googled something, and gave the phone to me. Does that look like what you saw? It was a scrawny thing with a pointy nose and red-brown fur. Definitely not. Well, of course you didn't see that, because that's a picture of a wolf. Before she could take her phone back, I read out loud the title below the picture from a news article. It belonged to a pack of jackals found in southern Serbia. She furiously took her phone from me and was too embarrassed to keep arguing. So I won by default. I will claim that was a wolf I saw on my deathbed. What a stupid reason to erode your niece or nephew's trust and respect in you. Although you'd probably had that ruined long before. I'm a librarian and I'm actually very proud of this one. Back then I was in charge of the cinema and music section of my library. This guy came with his son and asked me where to find our Puff Daddy CDs. We have one and I show him on the shelves where to find it. Then I was called in another place of the library and go check on my colleagues. On my way back to the music section, I see him coming out of the library and I don't know why. Maybe he seemed dodgy, but I have a feeling something is wrong. I go check. The CD is gone. It's not appearing on his library card, so he didn't borrow it. I have a look if he didn't misplace it, but it's not there. The guy just stole the Ducking Puff Daddy CD with his 8-year-old son from a public library where you can borrow IT for free. At this point I do nothing because we have no proof and no security camera. A few weeks later, the son and his sister, 8 and 10 years old, come to the library again and borrow some CD. I'm watching them and to my knowledge, they didn't steal anything. And I don't want to confront them because it would break my heart to have them stopping to come to the library because of their father bullshit. But this whole story still bothers me. So a few months later, I decide to try something. I still had a stolen CD barcode and I just decided to add it to their library card, as if they borrowed it. Worst case scenario, they say they don't have it and I apologize and say that it's a mistake from the library. A few days later they arrive, take some documents, return some, and just before leaving I proceed to explain them that they still have a document, a Puff Daddy CD that they need to return. The look of panic in their eyes and incomprehension was just delightful. They didn't say anything and a few days later they came back with the CD. I don't really care about Puff Daddy, and we could easily have replaced it, but just for the principle, it was one of my greatest victories. You should have told us ahead of time so I know which lies to use. He could very well be lazy, but lack of self-care is also a sign of depression. Just a heads up. I work at a daycare. If a child is sick, they will be sent home cause we don't want to risk infecting the whole class. Generally happens anyway. A lot parents don't agree with this policy, which leads to parents arguing with us that their kid isn't sick when they obviously are. My favorite time this happened was when a mother dropped her little boy off in an eye patch, yet the toddler was wearing a damn eye patch. I ask what happened and she says he hit his eye or something, which I didn't really believe. She says whatever I do, don't take off his eye patch. I pick him up and immediately lift up his eye patch. Pink eye. She was so pissed at me for doing that, and she was shocked I did it. The look on her face was so satisfying, although I got yelled at by my supervisor for it. I caught my mom eating my Halloween candy when I was little after she told me it wasn't her. Getting new candy from the store because of it was pretty satisfying. In my house, that was called dad tax and everyone had to pay. I was in a bar having some beers when I feel a tap on my shoulder. It was a guy I went to school with. I didn't really hang out with him back then, but decided to catch up and share stories anyways. At one point he mentioned sleeping with a girl I knew very well. A girl I knew for a fact was a virgin until after she graduated. I just kind of nodded and let him go. Then I said something along the lines of, "Oh, I actually know her very well. We'll have to hit her up. She comes out and drinks with me all the time." He turned white. The look of horror in his eyes was great. My sister is a really cute blonde. She's heard of plenty of wild nights she's had that have never happened. Some guys are just assholes who play pretend a lot. Sued a bloke for not paying his mortgage. He filed an application claiming he'd never been served with the court proceedings, and he'd just found them in his front yard. He also managed in 2 pages to set out 11 separate claimed defenses to the claim. Oh, and he also claimed he didn't speak a good English. Something didn't stack up, so I ran some court file searches and discovered he'd defaulted on another mortgage a few years earlier and filed the exact same affidavit back then. Even included the exact same photos of the court documents supposedly lying in his yard. The case did not end well for him. I knew my ex-wife was cheating but didn't tell her that I knew. Took her out to dinner and I casually asked questions about who she had been spending time with while I was at sea. She barely worked, so she had to spend her time doing something. She failed to mention the guy that had been staying at my house for nearly 2 months. The guy she had to call the cops on just to get to leave because I was coming home in 2 days. So I slid her a copy of the police report that was filed for the incident and watched as she crumbled over the fact she had been caught, and I didn't have to say a word. Divorce court was even more satisfying, in case anyone was wondering. Shit, but employee I used to manage called off and I knew he was bullshitting. Said he was sick as hell until I showed him and the GM his Facebook had checked him into about 6 different bars during a block party. At the time he was supposed to be working. A girl led me on only to tell me she couldn't date me because of my race. Well, she tried to lead me on again, but I made it a point to show as little interest as possible. Shit like walking past her without acknowledging I'd seen her and stonewalling any flirting attempts. She then gets the idea to make a friend of mine like her to make me jealous, but she picked one of my absolute best friends. So immediately, he told me what was happening. She was always sending him and I the same snaps and nudes and saying she missed us and shit like that. I think she assumed that we wouldn't talk to each other about this. Well, one night he and I were hanging out playing Halo, and we get a snap from her. It's her in the shower with a lot of steam. So I send her a picture of him looking disappointed, and he sent her a picture of me looking disappointed. She didn't talk to us for a few months after that. I worked with a guy who was extremely lazy. Every day in one 8-hour shift there were at least 2-hour-long smoke breaks and a combined hour of being on the shitter. Additionally, he was constantly on his phone when he was at work. So one day we were both sanding a long steel rail, him on one side and I on the other side. While he was in the bathroom I made a small mark above his portion of the rail to be able to tell where he started. At lunchtime, roughly 4 hours later, I had done about 20-30 featuring of rail. He'd done about 5. I questioned him about it, to which his reply was, "Nah bruh, I've done at least 20 featuring." He was fired a short time later for being unproductive. It was bittersweet. He was a decent guy, just sucked at our job. I was sitting with a couple friends and a guy I didn't know too well. all playing cards. We start swapping stories and the guy I didn't know starts telling the story of a time he went to a strip club. However, he had lifted the story word for word from a YouTube video, only changing the names. Rooster Teeth Animated Adventures. I started playing the video on my phone halfway through his story and connected it to the TV. I was around 15 years old and had a package delivered to my house. My crackhead neighbor came over, paced back and forth in front of the door before smoothly opening our gate, coming to the door, and picking up my package. I opened the door as she was walking off and she turned white as a ghost when she heard the door open. When I asked her WTF she was doing with my package, she explained to me that she was going to protect it for me, that she didn't know it was mine. Before I demanded she hand over my package and leave, I snapped at this lady, which was abnormal for shy little 15-year-old me. I was furious because what was inside that package was a gift for my mother, who was at work at the time. I'll never forget that. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.